The next session is all about giving you practical tips how to get started with your business between Israel and the UAE. This session alone could be easily a full-day event. In any case, if you are interested to hear more, to get more information, let us know, and we will see if we can organize a dedicated webinar within a few weeks. In any case, should you be joining us in Abu Dhabi in May 24-25, you will get a lot more information about this topic, and we will help you also to get the first contacts you need.
Welcome to our next session, Doing Business Between Israel and the UAE, with our two experts, Lorenzo Joris in Dubai and Gilad Karni in Tel Aviv. So Lorenzo Joris is the CEO of Creative Zone. Lorenzo is an entrepreneur and the man behind One World Communications and Leaders Middle East that started the Young Global Leader Summit and the Power Women of Arabia debate. Welcome, Lorenzo. Gilad Karni is the founder and CEO of the UAE Israel Innovation Office. Gilad is a prominent business player in the Israel technology scene and personifies the startup culture in Israel. So welcome, Gilad, as well. Tell us about your current most exciting projects, please.
Here we go. So thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here. You know, it's been 6 months or a little over 6 months since the Abrams Accord has been announced, and I'm still as excited today as I was 6 months ago. I've been in the business of exporting Israeli technology all over the world for the past 7 years. I started off as a serial entrepreneur and had some successful exits, then became an angel investor and very, very involved in the Israeli ecosystem. I've been involved with exporting technologies worldwide, but nothing has gotten me this excited, as excited as this Abrams Accord and the new relationships we have in that part of the world. I've always had relationships in the UAE and then the Gulf region, but coming out of the closet makes it so much better. There's so many more opportunities. And I can tell you this, Kate, that in the past 6 months, I've been getting dozens and dozens of requests and LinkedIn requests from my friends in the UAE, in other Arab countries, and in Israel, in order to do business together. And we're working on projects in almost any industry you can name. So in the past, I was dealing mainly only with technology. Now I also work with people who want to export dates, containers back and forth. We are working on a few projects, and the first projects that we worked on was an Israeli agro-tech company that exported sensors and know-how to a company in Sharjah who wanted to grow rice in the desert, which was a first for us. Now we're working on an Israeli medical company that wants to manufacture in the UAE and export and distribute all over the Gulf. So there's a lot of projects we're working in, really, really diversified, really excited to be in that part of the world.
Thank you so much, Gilad. Just wondering, Lorenzo, can you mirror that? Is that, did your business change in the last 6 months as well?
Definitely, yeah. Behind the comments of Gilad, what I can add is that we've seen a tremendous interest as well from our side of the business. As you're aware, Creative Zone, we're one of the largest business setup advisory companies, and we've received a huge surge of interest from Israeli companies looking to find out more information on how do they set up a business in the UAE, how do they go about partnering with people in the UAE to develop their businesses. Not all of them need to come and set up a branch or a new company from their existing companies in Israel, but many of them are trying to find what are the best angles. I think what Dubai and the UAE has to offer is that they are this springboard into the rest of the Middle East for Israeli investors that are willing to come and explore what's happening. And your conference talks about that about Bahrain, about Saudi Arabia, about the UAE. It's not only about the UAE for the Israeli investors, it's about Saudi, about Bahrain, about what the whole region has to offer. So this is where we're in the middle of this, luckily, as Dubai has been this cosmopolitan city, and this is how Israeli investors are using the city.
So Lorenzo, in which sector do you see most potential for new business initiations?
There's been across the board, we've heard a lot of interest in IT-driven tech companies, agri-businesses. Gilad himself, I know that he's aware in bringing a lot of innovation and technology from the agriculture and agri-business. We know that the UAE has a bit of a space to explore, and I think Israeli tech industry has the know-how, and they're bringing that into the UAE and into the region and seeing how they can further advance on their know-how to sort of expand in the region.
So IT and agriculture, Gilad, anything to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a few sectors that Israelis should notice, and when thinking about the UAE, the first of all and the most obvious is the government and the public sector. So the public sector in the UAE, they're spending weight. It's almost $103 billion a year. It's 25% of their GDP. So government and public sector should not be overlooked. It's a huge business for Israeli companies to come in. Agriculture, obviously it's a strategic priority for the federal government, especially in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. And it's crucial for ensuring future food security. So obviously agri-tech. Fintech is an area that a lot of Israeli companies can enter as well. Also clean tech and renewable energies. The national objective of the UAE is to increase contribution of clean energy from 25% today to 50% by 2050. And when the UAE government plans something, they mean it. And obviously telecommunications, healthcare, homeland security, cybersecurity, transportation, smart cities. So there's a lot of opportunities for Israeli companies to go and enter with their innovation and deep tech.
Would you add artificial intelligence and all the interfaces to it as well?
Absolutely. Artificial intelligence, AI today is everywhere, and it's something that needs to be implemented. The UAE is pretty advanced in a lot of those industries and sectors that I mentioned before. I think Israel is strong in deep tech, and the UAE is very strong in implementation. If they decide on something, they go for it. But like Lorenzo said, it's a springboard. It's a way for us to enter other Arab countries that we're not working with today. So if it's made in Dubai and not made in Israel and being sold to different Arab countries, this is what is very interesting for the Israeli entrepreneur, the Israeli companies.
So I should have asked you, when I listened to you and Lorenzo, I should have asked you, where do you see the least potential? I think that would be interesting as well to hear. Yeah, well, not elaborate on that for now, but, I guess, being not in direct communication as much as in the last 6 months, what do you deem is especially important to know for those companies who want to set up a business or an office in the UAE? Lorenzo, maybe you would like to start with this answer.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think to what I've seen so far, I've heard of and I've seen with my own eyes about 10, 12 business delegations from Israel come to Dubai in the last 2-3 months. I've taken part of several meetings of these business delegations in hotel rooms, and you can see the interest of a lot of Israeli business owners coming over. I think they have a very clear path on the way forward, which is they're looking for a partner. They're looking for someone that they can help them open doors over here in the UAE. They know something very important, which is also how to go about doing business here. In the UAE and in the Arab world, business is conducted, people sort of take their time. they like to build relationships. And this was a very important topic that was raised across many webinars that we've taken part, many of the business meetings. They said, look, everybody wants to do business here, but things here are done slightly different. I understand that Israel has a bit more of the American way of doing things, a bit more transactional, business-oriented type of thing. And here is another way. But I've seen people are open from Israel. They come, they want to meet, they want to build partnerships. So this is how a lot of what's happening right now is being made at the moment.
So you say that Gilad has to be patient, bring a lot of patience to do business with people.
Absolutely. So Kate, we've been doing business in the Gulf for many years.
So is patience something you learned in these years?
I'm sorry?
Is patience something that you've learned in these years?
Absolutely, especially the Emirati culture. It's very hospitable, warm welcome, but it's all about long-term and relationships and partnerships. And every trip that I make to the UAE, you know, we sit for dinners for hours and hours and hours, and we build those relationships, and we email and we call each other all the time. And we build those relationships. In Israel, it's different. We have a word in Hebrew, which Israelis can attest to, which is called tachlis. And the only way to translate it is right here, right now. We want to go in, close the deal, sell our products, get out, and come back to our families. And for that part of the world, I think it's different. They need to trust you first, and they need to build a relationship with you. And maybe a service such as Creative Zones, where you actually have to open an office in the UAE, is something which a lot of Israeli companies need to learn, because you will go way more forward if you have feet on the ground there and you actually have a presence than just fly in and do business, which I've seen dozens and dozens of companies fly in and try to do business there, but it's not easy. You need to create those long-term relationships.
Can you tell us a little bit more about these cultural gaps and how to bridge them? You know, also from your own experiences, maybe anecdotes and from both sides, from Dubai and Tel Aviv. How about Dubai?
So Dubai is
still mute.
Yeah.
You started
maybe I'll start.
No worries.
Dubai is very cosmopolitan and vibrant. It's business and commercial oriented, and it's very private sector focused, which is similar a lot to Tel Aviv and the businesses here. But there are differences. Of course, there are differences. A few tips that I could say is probably don't talk about politics, which is probably true to anywhere in the world. But be there for the long term. That's the biggest thing for me. Lorenzo?
Do you want to jump in, Lorenzo?
Yeah, definitely. In terms of anecdotes, I think I have an interesting story on one of the business delegations. It landed during the Hanukkah days. And with this group of Israelis, we ended up becoming friends, and we ended up celebrating Hanukkah at the lobby of one of the major hotels in Dubai. Now, a few years ago, this would have been impossible to think of. And I think this shows how, both nations, both cultures are open to this new reality. I hear that kosher food is being offered in many restaurants across Dubai. I've heard of Jewish weddings being done in the UAE. One top hotel is well known for hosting a lot of Israeli visitors and having parties. I've myself met a lot of Israeli tourists. And that brings me to that other point that I wanted to bring. Tourism. I think tourism is going to be a massive benefit for both sides of the border. I think I saw a report from the Ministry of Tourism from Israel estimating that there were going to be over 100,000 tourists going from the UAE into Israel to visit some of the major attractions. So I think a lot of the people from this part of the world can't wait to explore what has been sort of not allowed over time. Go and see Jerusalem and Tel Aviv and the great cities that this beautiful country has to offer.
So do you both think that well, when it comes to tourism, business travel will be bigger, and also the meetings business will expand between the two countries?
Well, I believe that conferences and meetings, it's all COVID-19 pending, but absolutely people have a sense of urgency to get out of Zoom. You know, they want to meet face to face, they want to be there. So as soon as it's possible, and as you guys probably know, Israel is a world leader now in vaccination, and we expect most of our population to be vaccinated within 2 months and open up in March or April, which is amazing. And if we're able to open up the events and conference-based industries in the next 6 months or so, I think everybody is up for that and wants to start meeting and doing business like we used to.
Oh, we would love to meet on May 24th in Abu Dhabi to speak about the business and trade opportunities in person, most definitely. So
we will be there.
This is going to happen. Let me, you know, from all the cultural and intercultural topics of doing business and building bridges between these gaps, how do you both can support businesses interested in, you know, setting up an office from your experience, like when it comes to visa, when it comes to tax-free, you know, all the whole administrative things that can be such a big project itself?
Yeah, I think the main way for us to do that is through information, through putting forward as much information and being open to advise as many people possible on the topics that people need to learn about. Together with Gilad, we've done a very successful webinar recently where it was also showcased all across Israel and the UAE, and we were talking about those points, those elements that people need to learn. And you're absolutely right, Kate, you're touching upon issues to do with tax and accounting, you know, regulations. Israel is a country that has an important tax on corporations, on individuals. UAE, it's a free zone, let's say it's a tax-free jurisdiction. So a lot of Israeli investors need to understand and are seeking information. Well, how does it work? If I operate in the UAE, am I liable to pay taxes from my company that is operating there? So to your question, yeah, it's through information. For us, disseminating information and educating people that are looking to do business in this region on how we can facilitate this information to them.
Thank you, Lorenzo. Gilad, would you like to add something?
And for us at the UAE Israel Innovation Office, it's all about facilitating trade between the two countries. So if an Israeli company wants to enter that market and have connections in a certain area, this is where we come in. But definitely, if you need boots on the ground, this is where Lorenzo's Creative Zone comes in for that. But I did want to add one more thing. We're talking about tourism, we're talking about IT, but one thing that people need to understand is the location of where Israel is and the UAE, and think maybe about how we used to do business or the traditional business, and that is seaports and containers. Because look where we are geographically for the UAE in terms of Europe. So I think this is going to be a huge part of the way the two countries do business. I'm not sure how it's going to be done, but all you need to do is look at the map and see that the port of Haifa and Dubai, which connects to the east, you know, to all the Asian countries and to Europe via Haifa, and this is where things are going to go in the future, and more traditionally, as opposed to all the IT and tourism we're speaking about.
Thank you so much. You know, we've been spoken already 20 minutes, so
okay.
I could go on for a longer time because there are so many
different
topics. Could you maybe, to wrap up this session, give some, well, insight on 3 of your main services and some words of encouragement for young entrepreneurs in the UAE as well as in Israel, or even, you know, abroad who are listening and watching this?
Gilad, you can go first, my friend.
Sure. Okay, no problem. So for Israeli companies who want to do business in the UAE, I think it's important to learn that the UAE, the way we perceive the UAE here in Israel, is people with a lot of funds, but you got to understand and respect the culture. First of all, when you go there, you'll understand how the Emiratis, which only make up about 10% of the population, the rest of the 90 is expats, are very, very knowledgeable, educated, and experts in their field. It's very, very important to do your homework first, but also not go there and expect a deal to be done right away. I mean, this is something that you need to put time and effort into and invest into entering a new market.
And get in contact with you for some more information and knowledge, right?
Me or somebody like our office, absolutely.
At the office.
It's definitely. But don't expect to fly there once and close the deal of your life. That's not going to happen.
But take the effort and time and patience to try, and you'll succeed, I guess, as an encouragement.
Yeah, build relationships, come up with real value propositions there, and be sure to have plenty of time to do your sales. It's not going to happen overnight. And make sure you get in front of the right people. There's a lot of fluff in both sides, actually. There's a lot of fluff, but there's also a lot of real deals that are happening. And you need to make sure that you meet those right people and not waste your time on a lot of people that are trying to do business that are not necessarily legitimate.
Thank you so much, Gilad. Lorenzo, your 3 services and words of encouragement.
I would say, as a final note to this session, I would say that really this new accord really brings the 2 nations in a way together that one another really complements the other. I think there is a win-win for both sides here. I think UAE is to benefit from what Israel has to bring into the equation in terms of their years of innovation. They're known as being the startup nation, and Dubai and the UAE can play that role of being a catalyst of utilizing this innovation, this entrepreneurship, and expanding into a massive market that was not existent for them before. We're talking about Saudi Arabia, the rest of the GCC, the other countries. So there is a win-win in every direction. Some tips that I could give is, if you're an Israeli investor, find yourself a good partner, find someone that is willing to show you around and tell you what's the way forward. Make use of years of experience of other people that have done business in the region. You know, let them hold your hand and show you around and take you around. And as services that we can give is that we have ways of finding those partners for you. We help you with the entire process of setting up your company from a legal point of view, getting your trade license, organizing your visas, and get you moving in the country. Then on, you have incredible offices like the one of Gilad that are supporting investors to expand into the region and giving them advice on these innovation activities and initiatives that they have. So really, we're all excited from both sides of the equation.
What great final words. Thank you so much, Gilad and Lorenzo, for taking the time and answering the questions and giving insights to what it means to do business between the 2 regions. Thank you so much, and all the best and good luck.
Thank you, Kate. Thanks, Lorenzo.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Gilad. All the best.